Well, hopefully that'll help us keep on topic, too. At least a little bit.
We'll see.
Yeah. This podcast contains adult language.
We're our versions of professional, and that's all that matters.
That's right. Welcome to the James Chambers Show. I'm your host for this podcast, James Chambers. And once again, across from me, we have Kate sitting in the chair to my right. Hello, Kate. How are things with you?
Well, pretty good. It's, one hit after the other with the news, but no, everything's pretty good. How are you?
Good. Pretty well. I can't complain. I've been a worthless lump all week. I haven't done anything around the house that I needed to get done, but, that's unfortunately par for the course right at the moment.
Well.
We are going to take a slight hiatus probably next week, if not maybe for 2 weeks on the show, because we will be going to a wedding, and so we'll be gone for about a week, and that'll span a whole weekend. So chances of recording and getting something edited and put out before then, after this show, will probably be pretty nil. So it might be a week or two before we come back, just so everybody's aware of that. Also, we have a studio update. We're going to be introducing a nice new tool to run in between the mixer and the recorder, which I think will help really clean up our sound and make us sound really as professional as we can, given our, recording in a fancied up attic. But, what are you going to do?
It would be a lovely closet. For short people. It
was a lovely closet for a child, actually. And now it is a very oddly shaped recording space, but it works. So thank you to my Uncle Phil for finding that piece of equipment for me at a ridiculously low price. And so I'm super excited to get that here in probably a week or two. We'll let you know how that goes. And hopefully you'll hear a difference in our recording style. Okay, so on with today's show. We've got a couple things we're going to touch on today. We've got more horribleness coming from the Catholic Church. We have an additional priest scandal that came up over the last 7 or 8 days. We'll follow up on that. And then we're going to touch on, of course, we can't not talk about the Brett Kavanaugh alleged sexual assault allegation that came over the last few days. And then we're going to play a new game that I absolutely stole from Crooked Media called OK Stop, where we will listen to audio of a video of anybody, somebody we think is interesting or ridiculous or whatever, and the game is to say, okay, stop, somewhere along the video, and we will hash that out. I think that'll be fun. And I think that's our big 3 for today. Yes, we'll try and stay on those 3. We'll see how that works. Yeah, okay, so I think let's rock and roll. Let's get into this priest follow-up story, because I think that one, we just can't not follow up on these stories that are so egregiously bad. We talked about one episode or two ago about the Pennsylvania priest scandal and kind of what's happening there. But this one is from Germany. Let's just go into a report that I found a couple different sources here. So in August of 2018, a grand jury report demonstrated more than 1,000 children were victimized by more than 300 Catholic priests over the span of 80 years. And this is the Pennsylvania issue. A class action suit has been filed going after several individual priests and 8 dioceses in Pennsylvania. And those are the Roman Catholic Diocese of Pittsburgh, Allentown, Erie, Greensburg, Harrisburg, Scranton, and Altoona, Jonestown, and the Archdiocese of Philadelphia. Now, just 1 week ago, a secret German Catholic report was leaked to the news outlet Spiegel, detailing some of the worst child abuse that I've ever seen from the church. This is from the BBC. More than 3,600 children in Germany were assaulted by Roman Catholic priests between 1946 and 2014. This leaked report revealed. The study was commissioned by the church itself and was due to be published on the 25th of September, so just here in the next week or so. According to the report, some 1,670 clergymen in Germany committed some form of sex attack on 3,677 minors, the German outlet Spiegel online reported. A church spokesperson said he was dismayed and ashamed by the findings. Because that's the height of being disgusted is dismayed and ashamed. At least he wasn't praying for them. Well, I mean, they probably did.
Well,
God.
probably.
So a report is the latest in a long series of revelations that have uncovered decades of sex abuse by Roman Catholic priests around the world. And according to this new study, only 38% of the alleged perpetrators were prosecuted, and most of those were facing only minor disciplinary procedures. So, and that's 1 in every 6 cases of this involved actual rape. But that means that was 628 children out of that group who were actually raped and more than just sexually molested. And that's, I mean, it's damning. That is damning evidence for an organization. And that's just in one country, let alone the millions of, Catholics around the world. I mean, especially in places where there's really no oversight, in multiple South American countries and Central American countries, and God knows in the Philippines and in Southeast Asia. I mean, who's accounting for all this? I mean, that's what's so scary about this, is that this final report from Germany had to be conducted at the request of the church through a German university, and they had some huge amount of resources, like 15,000 people that they'd interviewed, and finally found all this information. In fact, here, it was compiled by 3 German universities, sorry, not just one, but all 3, using 38,000 documents from 27 German dioceses. Its authors said the true extent of the abuse may have even been greater, as some records were, quote, destroyed or manipulated. So what are we supposed to take out of this? I mean, we found one thing here in America. Obviously, there have been multiple cases of priest abuse over the years, but, this one sex trafficking ring in Pennsylvania, essentially, and now we've got another one in Germany that's 3 times the extent of this. But
it's ultimately run by the same organization.
Right, it is. And that is what's so...
It's worse than the mafia.
God, and they're richer than the mafia, too. I mean, the amount of wealth and land and prosperity that's been accumulated by the Catholic Church is amazing. What should the legal consequences be, and who are responsible for those legal consequences? I mean, first and obviously the priests who did the abuse, they need to be locked up to the maximum extent of the law. I mean, I have no qualms with that at all. But does the church actually have some level of culpability in this? And to what extent?
Well, I think it would depend on how much of this was discovered through, the one thing that really bothers me about the Catholic Church is the whole concept of the confessional. And it truly, and I get that is the whole point of a confessional, is that you should be able to unburden yourself without judgment. Sure, you're given punishments to Hail Marys and Our Fathers and whatever, but ultimately that sin died there, and there is a confidentiality inherent to it. And I think that they've only allowed it to perpetrate. I mean, it's just, how much would they have learned had the confessional not been there?
Well, that's fair. But now the part of the fundamental basis of the faith is to be able to go to the ultimate arbiter of God's will on earth.
Well, and then here's the other thing, is how many of those things happen during confessional?
And that's a really good question. And we don't, that's the thing, is with these reports, we really don't know the exact why,
or when, or where. Yeah.
Unless the people who have been molested come forward and say, this is exactly, X, Y, and Z what happened to me, which is really rare.
Right.
Which will lead us into another topic here in a minute. But
well, you were saying, you asked the question, what should the consequences be, whether it's legal or personal or whatever, societal. I think at the very least they should be excommunicated.
The priests?
Yes. Yeah. Well, of course the priests. Why? I am not a victim blamer, or at least I try not to be. But
I don't know. Those kids keep talking about this shit. Kick them
I
out.
know. And obviously they're asking for it because, they're lovingly seeking God. But whatever. Anyway. And no, I do. I think that, I don't know how drastic of a step that is for the Catholic Church anymore. But I mean, what you have to do to get to excommunication, but I would think that abusing your position of power with the parishioners' children would be a problem.
You would think.
You'd think that would probably tick most of the boxes.
You would think so, but it seems like when these things have occurred, they have the church leadership have essentially shuffled these priests through the organization to find new pools, essentially, to be new people to be around, so that, their shame of this sin has sort of been washed out. It's been whitewashed to the point where people don't really know what this person has done, and therefore are totally fine with letting their kids go hang out with him.
Right.
Now, this has to, in my estimation, this has to escalate upwards in the chain of command, as it were, because you can't have an organization that's organizational structure allows for that to happen, because essentially you're hiding these child molesters in plain sight with an entirely new victim pool every time they move.
No, I agree with that, but I think I disagree with your characterization of the part you said right before that. I don't think that I don't think they allow it. I think they encourage it.
Well, okay. Yeah.
I don't know how else to say. Yes, it is being allowed, but I think more than that, in a tacit way, it's being encouraged.
Right. Absolutely. My implication was not to say that they're just ignoring it, but yeah, you're right. There's a structure in place that
do better, and we're going to send you to the next church. Don't diddle any kids.
God.
And really, that's what it is.
Yeah, no, I know. And it is so, but when we say it, we actually say it, and in more in just like a joking way about, like, hey, it's comedy time. No, this is like a legitimate, real situation. And that's what the punishment has been, is tisk tisk. You're not supposed to do that. Bad, bad, bad priest. Okay, we're going to move you over to this diocese. Like, what the fuck does that do? It's funny, not funny.
They treat alcoholism more seriously than they do sexual predators.
It would seem so, because they keep them. They keep sexual predators on hand with kids. Mm-hmm. It's really terrifying. So that kind of begs the question then, is the Catholic Church sustainable? Given this model, does the church survive over the next 25 years, let's just say, or does it have to essentially be torn down, or does it restructure itself to admit, wow, we've done some really bad things, not just this, but historically done some really bad things, and we need a complete overhaul. And now they are, the Reformed Catholics.
New Catholics?
Yeah. We're Catholics 2.0.
Right.
But
or Catholic Beta.
Oh, well, you got Catholic Beta before you get full Catholic 2.0, because you got to run those beta tests to weed out the pedophiles.
They like the whole symbolism. So like Omega Catholic, like the end Catholic.
I like that. Omega Catholic.
Omega.
Damn.
Ooh, how should it be? Anyway,
that's a cult. I like that. Could be like a new cult that they could start to develop on the side, like Opus Dei, but just kind of like weirder somehow,
right,
and more molesty.
Well, okay. I was kind of hoping if they were going to reinvent themselves, it would be for the better. But the weirdos could be the 2.0, I guess.
History has shown that the reinvention hasn't led to a whole lot of improvement, other than Vatican II. So you don't have to read Latin anymore. That was nice, but other than that,
right. Well, and I think to your question, I don't think that. Yes, the Catholic Church is going to suffer from an image crisis for a while, but their power structure enables them to stay in power unless they truly do something so heinous that they lose all of their
money and land,
and their followers. Whether or not they come to church, those people are still tithing in some way.
Yeah, that's true.
They're giving to the church in some way.
I tend to think that the church has an image problem for sure, but I think the church itself will stay just how it is, will not change, and will continue to operate as it is now for the foreseeable future. I think that's mortifying, and I think it's gross, and I think that church needs to be torn down and either just completely relegated to history or revamped in such a way that, we don't have these types of issues happening anymore. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think there are too many Catholics people who identify as Catholics. I mean, just look at here in our country. We have so many people who identify as Catholics, even though they're a lot fewer than the Protestant Christian that we normally see. But there are so many Catholics who just want to go, and I love how it's said around here. It's like, I just want to go to religion. And it's like, they just want to go to church. They go and they talk to their priest. They hear a word. They stand up, they sit, they do the hymns.
Ritual, all of it.
The ritual feels good to them.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, their priest isn't doing it. So clearly not all Catholics are bad. So therefore we don't have to change. I think there's enough of those people out there that the church just isn't going to feel the pressure. When you have a sort of quasi-liberal-ish pope who's trying to shake up some of the foundations just a little bit, he has a ton of pushback just from within that little, the highest levels of the church.
I've heard of so many people calling for him to resign.
Yeah, I have too. And
because he's the one that created the problem.
Right.
Okay, he's probably the one that's done the most to acknowledge, and I don't know what you can do about it, but at least acknowledge that, hey, this is gross and a heinous, grievous sin that we've committed against you.
Yeah, we have a systemic sin problem, a systemic culture of a level of violence with our, I would say patrons. That's totally wrong.
Parishioners.
Parishioners, thank you.
Oh, that patron is, I mean, it's almost interchangeable, really.
Yeah, it is. I just think that when we have this kind of organization, they need to be held under far more scrutiny than they are by the legal system. And the legal system has some responsibility to monitor these things, even though I know it's a little sketchy or a little scary for people to think that the government, the big government, are going to be looking at private religious organizations for scrutiny. I know that pushes a line. In fact, it pushes a big line. But at the same time, you have organizations that are perpetuating child abuse.
Yeah.
And that's just one issue, not let alone all the other issues that have come before.
Well, I honestly don't think that the law should have any more oversight of any of it than they do. I think that there should be accountability within the organization itself to out these people. That is, and honestly, if anybody is even more guilty of a terrible thing than the original perpetrator, it is the higher-ups that just moved them around. Yes. To me, they are far more complicit or active in the crimes against these children than, I mean, yes, the priests did terrible things to these, but the higher-ups, their cardinals or bishops or whatever it is, did nothing except go, oh, bad boy, go over here, don't diddle kids.
Yeah.
And then,
you're making us look bad,
you're
man.
Doing it again.
Yeah.
And I've heard a lot of people say that, if they just liberalized the church, if they would allow the priests to marry or, all of this. And I'm like, I don't think that would help, honestly, because I think that if you're going to molest children, you're going to molest children. It doesn't matter if you're married or not.
That's true. The other part of that is that you're right. If you're a child molester, the chances are you're going to be a child molester no matter what you do external to that activity. But if you, let's just say, liberalize the church, you're essentially taking away the foundations of the church. That is one of the primary things that the church does for their priests, is that you will be celibate, you will be isolated, you will be just a conduit, to your parishioners from God and from your higher ups in the Catholic hierarchy structure. That's all they are there for. So if we take away that whole foundation, we are essentially saying your church needs to be reformed overall, because that is a fundamental pillar.
Well, but, then don't you just become Pentecostal or something?
I mean, it'd be easier. But so I think what we're coming down to, I think we're in agreement that the church is probably, as a structure, going to survive.
Yeah, and that's really disappointing. I hope that enough people are angry enough at this point, especially, and to me, it's the interviews that I'm seeing on TV when this stuff comes out. It is older people that have always faithfully served the church, and they are like, they're going to church, but they're standing with their backs turned to the priests or whatever because they want this to be addressed.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be things like that if any change is to occur, I mean, they don't care so long as you keep writing them checks and they cash.
Right.
And that's terrible. But that's, to me, the long and short of it.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a great corporate structure. I mean, that's what it boils
is.
down to.
And,
It's
I mean, they probably have, I don't know how much of the world's weight of gold that's been mined in their possession. I mean, yeah, I'm telling you, it's a fantastic business model.
It really is.
They've structured themselves that no matter what, they will survive. Yeah. They have enough money to outlast any scandal. They have enough good things that they can. I mean, it's hard to think of them when shit like this comes out, but they do have enough good things, like their health ministries they have excellent hospitals by and large.
Sure.
I mean, so there are things now, fucked up things happen in those hospitals just like they do anywhere else. But I mean, they do have good social missions, and those will be the things that they're going to cling to and grasp to. And they're going to, we're going to have this initiative or this outreach and that is how they're going to survive because they have that wheel set in motion. There's always something going on.
Right. So despite the fact that there is a preponderance of evidence, and in this case, the better of 4,000 children over the course of years who have been molested in Germany and over 1,000 that were here in the United States, and God knows across the world, the Catholic Church is going to maintain and continue its mission, whatever mission that seems to be, or at least its side quests, as it were. That's incredibly disappointing. And I think that it's sad. And I think that we, as a society, have an obligation to keep tabs, even if it's not governmentally, but socially, on these organizations and put an extreme amount of pressure on them, if possible, to keep internal accountability a real thing. Don't whitewash. If we can help real practitioners of the faith keep their faith honest and keep their priests honest, then okay, if that's what you want to do, then I'm fine with you going and doing that. Go to your religion. That's cool, but you have to hold your priests accountable. I think that's kind of where that stands.
Well, I think that, the allegations have to come to light before you can hold anybody to account. I think that that's the problem, is that these things aren't found out until long after this priest has been transferred.
Right.
I mean, at least not to the general population of the congregation. I think that it's probably been hushed up with either money or whatever. They ship the priest off. It's this great thing. Oh, they've been transferred to this new diocese and new great things. Yeah. I mean, I would have to, and then I also do understand kind of on the church's part. I mean, how many people are lining up to be priests? You
That's
only
no
have
excuse, though.
No, but you only have so many priests to go around. I'm not saying it's right or it's good, but can you excommunicate? Can you fire these people if you do not have the people to replace them to serve these dioceses?
That's their problem. I don't.
Well, no, I don't disagree, but I'm saying, I'm trying to, the 3,000-foot view. I'm just bird's eye view. I can kind of see. I don't agree with it. I think it's really shitty all around, but I can see why they might not have a choice but to just move them. From the manpower wise, I'm not saying no.
I know
I'm
you're
not trying to
right.
excuse them.
Right.
I'm not at all. But I mean, it's also how many nuns are there lining up to be? Maybe I'm really out of touch on this. I don't know.
No, but I have to say that's got to be one of the shittiest excuses ever, though.
Well, I don't
just
disagree,
a matter of personnel.
But it's not like you can. It's not like you can just go to the PenMac and hire I mean,
right.
Or whatever the hiring.
Do you believe in Jesus?
Right.
You're hired.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's terrible. And with that, we're going to move on to our next topic. Brett Kavanaugh, speaking of abuse and sexual shenanigans, this seems to be the theme of the show today so far. We all know that Brett Kavanaugh, and if you haven't read up on Brett Kavanaugh, you should go back to 3 or 4 episodes ago with the Cavalcade of Kavanaugh episode that details who he is as a justice and who he is as a Republican operative, and how he was selected for the Supreme Court pick with the Federalist Society and Leonard Leo and all that, and details the shady money trails and all that led to his pick for the Supreme Court. So just as a quick side note, go back and listen to that episode. We'll wait.
I'm not good at waiting, Marshall.
Damn it. All right, we're back. Okay. So given all of that, we've had a contentious set of hearings with Brett Kavanaugh over last week with the Judiciary Committee. And it was interesting. There was some fireworks, but nothing that we didn't expect was going to happen happened. It was all pretty much political theater. But over the last week, we did have a bit of a bombshell. Brett Kavanaugh was basically set to be confirmed by the committee and then by the Senate. And he would be the first legitimate SCOTUS pick appointed by Donnie John Trump. The first one was a holdover that should have been Obama's. I've argued this before, but Neil Gorsuch should not be on the court. It should be Merrick Garland. And this would be Trump's first actual SCOTUS pick. But that's not happened. It didn't happen that way because Mitch McConnell is a
because a partisan
hypocrite?
hack, right? Yeah, the rules applies to not us. Them, not us.
Because they're in power
us,
and
not them.
They're fucking hypocrites. So there's that.
I mean, I would change the rules all the time if I could get away with it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Why not?
Anyway,
consistency. So this week there was a bombshell revelation that has upended the entire process for Kavanaugh. He's been accused of attempted rape at the age of 17 while he was still in high school. The female victim was, of course, also a teenager. She was 15 years old. He and a friend were extremely intoxicated at a house party, and Brett was accused to have trapped this teenage girl in the bedroom, turned up the music so as not to be heard, pushed himself onto her while attempting to take off her clothes. And this is from NBC specifically. Christine Blasey Ford, a California professor, says that the assault occurred in the 1980s when she and Judge Brett Kavanaugh were in their high school in Maryland. Speaking to the Washington Post, Ford claims that Kavanaugh physically and sexually assaulted her while providing very specific details about how he allegedly pinned her to the bed, groped her, and covered her mouth to prevent her from screaming with such force that she was afraid he might suffocate her, which I find a particularly appalling piece of information in that accusation. Ford only escaped when Kavanaugh's friend drunkenly fell on top of them, toppling everybody to the ground, and she was able to flee the scene and lock herself in a close bathroom and was listening until the boys left the upstairs, and then she herself left the upstairs and went down and left the party altogether. So the question is this was in the 1980s. So why wait this long? Is this just a he said, she said type of situation? And I say, no, it's absolutely not that. Most young women and many older women don't talk about sexual assault. And a 15-year-old girl in the 1980s, I mean, most victims of sexual assault or rape are afraid of being shamed or blamed by society. They're afraid of not being believed or being dismissed as liars or hysterical or sluts. I mean, it's victim blaming 101. Mm-hmm. And this is how it happens every single time. Why wait to come forward? Well, clearly it's to protect herself and her family from us, from society. And eventually, she's doing it to protect her spouse and her kids and her lifestyle. And she's a professor in California. I can't remember which college or university she teaches at, but she has a professional career that she has worked very hard to attain. Of course, she isn't going to want to put herself in the spotlight and unleash the torrent of horrible, disgusting trolls that are going to come after her, which they will, and they are right now. She is, and this is not something, this is something I just heard today. She has actually left her home, and she and her kids and her family have left their home and are living somewhere we don't know. In hiding because of these fucking assholes who keep coming after. She's getting death threats at school and death threats at home and her email and rape us, people saying that they're going to find her and rape her. I mean, these are horrible people. And this is why she wasn't planning on coming forward at all. And it disgusts me that this is the reaction from certain people, is that, wow, you accuse somebody of doing something awful. Well, guess what? I'm going to threaten you with doing something awful. I mean, people are fucking horrible. These are horrible people. She's also considering having to get private security for her family because of this. And that's so that's a side note. That just happened today, but it really bothers me that that's the case. So even after she wrote to Congress months ago about the incident, which was actually about 2 months ago, she requested total anonymity. And that's why Dianne Feinstein, who had the report or the letter for 2 months before they brought it up in the Judiciary Committee. That's why she didn't bring it up then, was because Christine did not want her name to be associated with this. She just needed to tell somebody that this is something that this potential SCOTUS jurist has done in the past. Well, her anonymity got shot. Journalists doing their job kind of figured out this could be who it was, and they started to follow her and they started to track her down. She knew that her anonymity was gone, so she went ahead and said, yes, it was me. I wrote the letter. I'm willing to come forward and testify that this is, in fact, the case. There are some corroborating events here. She and her husband went to couples therapy in 2012, and there are therapist notes that she has provided to the Judiciary Committee accounting almost exactly word for word what happened in that incident from the 1980s. So her therapist knew about it. Her husband knows about it. And it took her that long to actually be able to talk to other people about this incident. So that's a pretty strong correlation. And also, and this is not definite, this wouldn't hold up in a court of law, but she had a polygraph test that was administered by a former FBI agent, and she passed.
Right.
Absolutely passed. There was no question that she at least believed that she was telling the truth. Now, people argue that polygraphs are not reliable, and that's true to a large extent, but polygraphs are used. It
leads credence to the claim.
It does.
That's all. At this point, they are not considered reliable evidence. You're correct. But it is just one more. It's
one more piece of the puzzle that lends credence to. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is they use polygraphs on potential witnesses and victims and people who are their prosecutors. They use this technique all the time, and especially on witnesses. And it bears a lot of fruit. So I think that these things alone lend credence to her claim. I think that she is a compelling witness. And I think we need to think it through, because logically it makes more sense that she's being truthful. Did she plant these seeds of doubt and this plot to overthrow Kavanaugh back in 2012? Or why would she specifically identify Kavanaugh's friend who was complicit in the attack, Mark Judge? He and Brett are still friends. Why would she identify such a clearly biased witness as somebody that she would relate to? I mean, it's going to back his story up, not hers.
Right.
In a book, Judge even wrote that in high school, he and his friends, including Brett Kavanaugh, would routinely get blackout drunk and do stupid things. So he admits that this is a scenario that's possible. I believe that Christine Blasey Ford is credible and probably telling the truth. And I think that Judge Kavanaugh, in his flat denial of it, is demonstrating something that I think we really need to pay attention to. This is something that needs to be taken seriously and investigated before any vote on him can be handed down. If this is true, is this disqualifying for Brett Kavanaugh to sit on the Supreme Court? He didn't actually rape her. He had tried to, in this allegation, he attempted to rape her, but he was unsuccessful. And apparently it's only one incident
that we know of
from 36 years ago. But I think we have to say that we know of because, it's not like with Donald Trump where there's like 19 different allegations out there and, things that are like track record after, piece after piece of the puzzle for decades. With Kavanaugh, there's only this one incident that we know of. Is that disqualifying for him to be on the court?
I think so.
Yeah.
I do. And it's not, I don't want to ruin anybody's life. I know he's already a federal judge, so I don't think that he should necessarily lose that position.
His life ain't going to be ruined for any of this.
Right.
His privilege is so fucking high. It's
right.
Yeah,
so
he's going to be fine.
I think you should absolutely, it's the level of the allegation. If somebody were like, he stole $500 from me on a whatever, okay, well, pay it back, dude, and let's call this good.
Yeah.
This is a physical, traumatizing event for this woman. If it took her until 2012 to tell her husband and it had to be in couples therapy, I imagine some part of it became an issue in their lives.
I would imagine so.
So, yeah. I mean, and like you said, the flat denial of it, like it just wasn't even possible. I don't know if you watch any Trevor Noah or not, but I was watching a show.
Mm-hmm.
I've never actually seen his actual show until last night. And
Really?
yes, I've seen clips and stuff, but I'd never seen the actual show until last night. And he was actually talking about this. He was like, Kavanaugh was like, "Oh no, it couldn't have been me." And basically it was, I skipped 17. There was no way,
Right.
It couldn't be this. It couldn't be this, or because of this. And you know what? I wasn't ever even 17. It was kind of the way he took it. Like, so there, I couldn't have been me.
Yeah, it's a blanket denial that includes my entire life. Not only did I not do this, but I would never have done it anywhere to anybody. And
under any circumstances.
Right. And
whatever.
And that's the thing is, so here's part of the question that I think we should ask is that he was technically a minor, and so was she. Now, he was in a position for his life not to be ruined by it. He essentially was able to continue on. He finished through Georgetown. He went through, Harvard. I mean, he went through all of or Yale. I don't remember. He went to one of them. I think it was Harvard. It doesn't matter. He graduated.
Ivy League.
Yeah. He's been a Republican operative for his entire adult career, and a very successful one, including being, working in the Ken Starr investigation, being part of that independent counsel, being, a federal judge for, over a decade. I mean, the guy has got a resume. What happened to her? That's the thing that I think people are kind of forgetting is that if true, which I think it is, then she basically stopped her life for something like 5 years after this event because she lost herself and didn't know what to do. Who's she going to talk to? It's like 1982, I think, is when this happened. And,
right.
The Me Too movement wasn't exactly around back then.
Well, and it's barely around now. I mean, if you listen to or read any of the crap about this.
Yeah.
I mean, I read a wonderful opinion article in the Washington Post by, I think it's, let me look. I'll look. I think it's okay. Alexandra Petrie.
Mm-hmm.
But it's called Some Interpersonal Verbs Conjugated by Gender.
Uh-huh.
And you should read it because, I mean, it addresses this very thing and the way that it's talked about. And basically, it's if you do this, you're ruining his life. He was 17, and it becomes less about him as the story progresses, as these things happen things happen. And then from the female perspective of how this story plays out.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, the end line is, this is how this keeps happening. And it's the narrative that's played over and over and over again. Anybody that, has the time, I would recommend reading it. It was very well written.
And what was that? How did I get that?
Some Interpersonal Verbs Conjugated by Gender. And it's by Alexandra Petrie at the Washington Post.
The Washington Post.
And I think it was posted on September 19th. So just yesterday.
I think those kinds of reports are not only extremely astute, but so important for people to read because we do fundamentally live in this patriarchal society that is so difficult to break out of. And this is a perfect example of that because we have a person with an incredible amount of privilege who is essentially, I mean, if things keep going the way they're going, they're talking about trying to hold a hearing for him and Ford on Monday. Ford has said she does not want to appear before the Judiciary Committee unless there is an FBI investigation to have a nonpartisan sort of non-biased eye on this situation, mm-hmm. which she has every right to all. Yes. And the FBI has said, yeah, we can do that. But the Judiciary Committee said, nah, it's not necessary. Donald Trump has said, nah, it's not necessary.
Well, of course it's not.
Of course it's not. But that's the problem. That's so indicative of the problem. And I've even heard people who work in the FBI or who have been former FBI agents say, yeah, we could have an investigation done in 2 to 3 days. Like, if you're willing to wait 2 or 3 days, we could have all the facts. I mean, we've done it before. They did it with Clarence Thomas. Oh my God, I just blanked on her name.
Anita Hill.
Thank you. God damn it. I was just reading this earlier today.
It's disturbing to me that this is the second time that this has come up in history, and I'm really concerned. And I don't know all of the details of the Anita Hill
Yeah, it's too far in my
accusation. Well, I mean, we were probably just becoming politically aware. It was the early 90s.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, but
late
even then,
80s, early 90s. And so, I mean, but yeah, and it was a completely different culture then. So, of course.
Back when Republicans weren't crazy.
Well, not as crazy.
Not as crazy.
They bought that trickle down shit. So we can't say not crazy.
But even then, that investigation took 3 days to conclude. And they backed up, who they needed to back up. It was all on background. It didn't destroy the process. The whole thing. Now, of course, Thomas got,
well, he got
through it anyway. But
which is, see, that's what's even more disturbing. And I'm hoping that we are far enough down the road now that I don't even remember it being made such a big deal. Of course, like I was young.
I do remember it being a really big deal. I think I wasn't super politically active for sure, but I also wasn't paying a whole lot of attention to the news because I was more concerned about going into high school and, am I going to get beat up? What's going on?
Am I going to have terrible acne?
Has my acne?
Girls like me?
And I'm just learning how to play bass because I'm a badass.
Well, of course the girls will like you then.
Right. But, so I was paying attention to that, but I remember hearing every time my dad would watch the news or I'd hear other people talking that it was like, that was a big fucking deal. And the FBI played a key part in that. And that was under George H.W., I believe.
Yeah.
Now, he even said, yeah, of course we should let the FBI investigate because they will give us the facts that we need. I cannot, in any universe that we might live in this multiverse, that Donald Trump would ever say, yeah, let's go ahead and let the FBI investigate because we need to know what the facts are. He's not going to do that. And he's the only one at this point who can pull that trigger. Well,
and here's the thing. I mean, this is just the icing on the cake. I mean, there were already so many things that were concerning about this man before the sexual assault allegation. I mean, there were so many reasons before to just be like, no, next.
Once again, go back and listen to the Kavanaugh edition of the episode. You'll hear some of those issues.
Right.
But yeah, you're exactly right. He is a bad pick to begin with from a normal American standpoint. If you're a conservative operative, he is a great candidate because he's all about tearing down the administrative state. He's all about deregulating. He's
a neoconservative.
He is as far right as you can pretty much go and still be nominated to a judgeship. You know what I mean? Like he's
with any credibility. Anyway.
Exactly. I think we've already, before the show started, we were talking, and I think to your point was that there's a gradating scale of, did you
things
smoke
that should follow you?
Yeah. Did you smoke a little weed? Did you steal a candy bar?
Did you rape someone? Did you try to rape someone?
Not on the same scale.
Right. Yeah. And not only that, but if you look at the man's own marker, he refused a 17-year-old immigrant an abortion.
Right.
So if her teenage decision should follow her for the rest of her life.
Maybe his should too.
Yes, I'm just saying if it's good for the goose.
You're right. Well, so that is part of the question then. Is it I'm reformulating some of my thoughts on this, having this conversation, because I think that before I was leaning on the line of no, it really shouldn't follow you. I mean, again, obviously there should be consequences.
Always.
But is that disqualifying to, get a government job or whatever the case may be? And my answer to that is still no. I think that if you wanted to work at the post office, if you wanted to clerk for a judge, or if you were, just working in the VA or whatever it is.
USDA or Department of Agriculture or whatever. You want to be a grunt, that's fine.
Yeah, and that would not be disqualifying for any of that. I think that people, as long as you admit it and say, I'm sorry, or I don't remember this happening, but I do know that I did get blackout drunk a lot in college, so I can't say yes or no, but my God, if it happened, I am really sorry.
Right.
How fucking hard is that? That's just being a mature adult. But
but that's because we're mature adults. We're not vying for this, this position that comes with all of this power.
And that's the key difference, is that if he wasn't vying for a judgeship, if he wasn't trying to be a lifetime appointment on the Supreme Court of the United States of America, that is the problem. Like, that is where I agree that is something he should not be allowed to participate in. He should not be allowed to be confirmed to sit on the bench. I don't see any compelling evidence against that.
I don't think there is any. And again, it goes back to the whole ethics thing. The fact that there is any question of whether or not this is true or that it happened. I mean, if this was some lunatic that, I mean, obviously she holds a position that has great responsibility. I mean, she's a teacher at a university. She's not an idiot, you know, and that's some of that in that article that I mentioned. That's one of the dichotomies is like, if you're a man and you go on to lead a productive life, then of course that's great. But if you're a woman and you go on to lead a productive life, well, it couldn't have been that bad. But if you don't, then, well, what did you lose anyway? Exactly. Yeah. And so it's such a catch-22 for the women. And so I know I'm digressing, but I really feel like any whiff of that kind of scandal, whether it was just regular assault on the body, not a sexual assault, say he had got drunk and beat some dude with half to death, right? You know, and doesn't remember, you should still be held accountable for that. Just like any other normal person, because that's one thing that's fair to look at is to say. And I don't feel like because of these things, and I don't feel like you should get to decide things about my body. Well, period. Sure. Because you obviously don't respect my body. And it's not just this allegation. It's all of the other rulings and opinions that you've had before. No. Bye. I agree with that. Sorry. I'm really upset about this in a lot of ways because I do feel like that this person is going to be rammed down our throats onto this court without a thorough vetting to start with. And I feel like it's dirty pool on the back end of it because there was almost a year from when Scalia died to the next election, and we had to wait and there's an election in less than 2 months, bitches. You can wait that long. Yeah, absolutely. No, the hypocrisy here on that level is ridiculous. And that's where I'm sorry, but the soul of the GOP leadership is lost. They are gone. I mean, I don't know how any true honest thinking person can align themselves with that party at this point. The Democrats have their own problems, but the Republicans are pushing some really, really fundamentally un-American, undemocratic and dishonest and absolutely hypocritical shit down our throat. They own all three levers of power right now, and they feel the need to use that all three levers to get all of their agenda in and get it done before this next election because there's a good chance they'll lose just one lever of power. And it really boggles the mind that people would still support this particular organization. Like they're not conservative. They're not fiscally conservative. They're not ideologically lined up with anything that the American people really want when you look at the polls. So who the fuck are these guys? Mostly guys. You know, I mean, I know this is a digression, but it goes to Brett Kavanaugh being a political operative because he's in this boat too. Well, and yes, and I don't feel like it's a digression necessarily because I feel like it's an explanation of the situation that we are in because no matter what happens, these people who happen to have the majority, as you said, in every branch right now are going to ram this through. And they have abandoned principle for the name of party power and principle, integrity, honesty, decency, all of those things have been sacrificed on the altar of that umbrella. Power. Yes. I mean, they have truly just shit on it. Basically, they're like, well, fuck you. I'm getting mine. That's how it looks now. That's how whether it is. Or not, I'm not an analyst. I could not begin to say, but that's how it looks. Yeah. I'm an armchair psychologist here. I mean, you're trying to fuck people over and you're doing shady shit and you're robbing whoever and you're fucking who knows how many porn stars and you're regulating uteruses but telling your lovers to have abortions. Right.
And they're about to shove another massive tax cut for the wealthy down our throats that is massively unpopular. And they're about to, this is tax cut, Trump cut 2.0 is about to come, probably right before the midterms. And it's going to take, again, hundreds of billions of dollars funneled towards the wealthy away from us, which, just once again, intellectual, dishonesty here. They know that this is going to blow up the debt and the deficit. It's already blown because this stupid tax cut before.
If you have no right to call yourself conservative, because in my experience, in my studies, conservatism has always had a very fiscally responsible approach.
Until Ronald Reagan. And then deficits don't matter.
Well, but that's because trickle down.
Yep.
Because God's going to pee on the wealthy people, and they're going to pee their money down to the poor people, but not enough that people could become not necessarily poor, but Anyway, that's another conversation.
It is. Anyway, fuck you, Brett Kavanaugh. We're done with you. Go away.
And if you had any decency or integrity, you would, in fact, recuse yourself.
# step down, Brett.
Yeah.
Let's play a game.
I love games. If I win, I love games.
This game is called OK Stop. And it's something we're going to watch a video, or in this case, listen to a video. And whenever we feel the need to, we're going to break into the video and say, OK, stop, and say whatever it is that we need to say. And yes, I totally stole this game from Crooked Media. Shout out to Crooked Media, and specifically Pod Save America and Love It to Leave It. Awesome shows. You should watch that and go find Crooked Media. And I totally stole this, and hopefully they won't care if they ever run across it because I just promoted them. We'll see. But today we have two options, and I think we've selected our options, but today we have two select videos that we can watch. One is from Dana Lash, the spokesperson for the NRA, talking about one of the most heinous and despicable social engineering plots from the leftists, Thomas the Tank Engine. Or...
oh my God.
We have Tucker Carlson, a Fox News talk show host and apparent ethno-nationalist, what the fuck, Tucker, telling us that diversity is bad. I think we went with Tucker Carlson.
Yes, let's go with what the tuck fucker.
All right. This, just so you know, this is the first run of this game on the show, so we'll try to make it as glitch-free as possible, but you never know.
And it is us.
It is us. So we're going to break into the video about midstream because that's when he starts going on this diversity rant.
Department for sensitivity training. So here goes. First, how has our current immigration system made America more stable and more prosperous? In your answer, please explain what happened to the state of California. It used to be called the Golden State, had a thriving middle class, had the country's best schools.
Okay,
now
stop.
The schools in
Hold on. Fuck you and your California reference for a start. California has the 6th largest economy on the planet. It's doing fine. Now, the problem with diversity has actually helped that. I don't know if you know this, Tucker, but illegal immigrants and migrant workers actually produce almost all of the food that we eat in this country, like the vast majority of it, and they are out there busting their asses to pick it for you, Tucker.
For almost nothing, by the way.
For almost nothing. And guess what, Tucker? Most white kids don't want to go out and pick fucking lettuce. They won't go pick lettuce. This has been tried before. They won't do it.
California are a complete disaster. The middle class is vanishing, and the nation's largest mass of impoverished people remains behind to serve a tiny pool of tech oligarchs.
Hold up.
How exactly did that happen?
Could those problems be because of the tax structure that we have? I don't know. Normal people like you and I, various ends of the spectrum for middle class to even the poorest, we're paying more than our share in comparison to wealthy people, and we're not supposed to complain. I don't understand. Okay, no.
Next, how precisely is diversity our strength? Since you've made this our new national motto, please be specific as you explain it. Can you think, for example, of other institutions such as, I don't know, marriage or military units in which the less people have in common, the more cohesive they are?
Yes, excuse me. I'm sorry. If I'm good at math, and okay, we've stated that I'm an accountant, not that that makes me good at math. But if I understand how to keep our checkbook balanced and you are better at making sure that we have groceries all the time, I don't feel like that's a bad combination of mismatched qualities, for one. And who wants to dig a ditch? I'm not gonna.
And that's true. And also to his point that he just made about having, what does cultural diversity, sorry, not even cultural, he just said diversity. What does that do for us, essentially? Diversity gives us everything from art to history to music to literature to fucking food. I mean,
it's the only thing in the entire thing that expands our consciousness as a culture.
Absolutely. It is what happened to the American melting pot. That's what America was billed as, especially in the 30s, 40s, 50s, when it's like, well, come on over, America, the melting pot. What now? That's somehow not okay.
Except for those Irish or whatever it was of the decade.
Of that particular decade.
We've always been extremely racist to somebody or
some group.
Prejudice. Right. I don't know that racist is the right word, but prejudiced at the very least.
At the very least. That's very true. I think when Tucker went away from the necktie, or I should say the bow tie, over to the straight necktie, I think he ties it too tight. It is throttling his carotid artery.
It's actually probably his wife.
Probably.
Along better with your neighbors or your coworkers if you can't understand each other or share no common values?
Okay, stop. Please. Once again, let me reiterate this. Fuck you, Tucker. Come on, man. What you're saying is we don't have equivalent values from culture to culture.
Well, and not only that, but I mean, was that specific with your neighbors? I'm sorry, why do you have to have anything more in common with them than the property line?
Right. Well, and
unless you're being dicks to each other, what do you have to have in common other than your property line? Be a good neighbor. Yeah. That's the rule, right?
And most of us don't even know who our neighbors are now. Right. And most of us live in relatively racially similar neighborhoods. But I mean, this whole concept that somehow because and I know what he's referring to. He's talking about some report that was done like 2 months ago where a quote from a bartender was taken out of context in some small town. I wish I could remember the state, where he basically said, or they claim he said, it's become more and more difficult to understand people who are living in this town because they're becoming more Latino. The actual quote and the full line, he did say it is becoming harder to understand each other because there are more people who speak Spanish. But I look at that as a challenge to overcome, and I find it more interesting to learn about these new people who are coming in. They took that quote completely out of context, and that's what he is referring to. The thing is about Tucker, he is an amazingly good propagandist. He is a fucking shill, but he is a really good propagandist, because that whole thing just washed right over. If you didn't know the reference, he was referring to already something that had been debunked months ago that he said and he reported on. He rankles me the wrong way.
Yeah.
Please be honest as you answer this question. And if diversity is our strength, why is it okay for the rest of us to surrender one of our central rights, freedom of speech, to just a handful of tech monopolies?
Oh, hold on.
And by the way, if you're
hang on. What does that even mean? So is he trying to say that Facebook and Twitter and all this shit is saying what is appropriate?
He's referring to partially the Alex Jones deplatforming, but he's also referring to somehow this allegation of conservative sites and conservative voices are being silenced on Google, and their algorithms filter them out, and that
maybe
kind of thing,
people just aren't searching for them, and maybe they aren't paying enough to be high enough up on that list, because really that's how that works,
right? And Google's come out and said this, like, actually, we have our algorithm pulls what's interesting and popular. And if
what people are searching for, or what you're paying to put up there.
Yeah. So this whole issue, and it's interesting that he's equating somehow diversity and then talking about tech companies being not diverse, and they're owning. I don't know. It's bizarre.
Yeah. Okay.
are so obviously true, why does anyone who questioned them need to be shamed, silenced, and fired? How about this question? After spending 2 centuries overcoming our country's painful history of racial discrimination and hatred, why is it once again acceptable, even encouraged, to attack people on the basis of their skin color?
Okay, stop.
Yeah.
Really? Okay, Tucker. Here's the thing. You just assumed that racism is gone, that racism is done. Somehow all of that history... This terrible
institution that for so long ago existed, and we are moderately shamed because we couldn't figure out how to keep it going.
It is, yeah.
That's what I heard. I mean...
Yeah, he's saying that, okay, because we solved racism, and now that that's done, we should let it all go. And now you want to talk about dealing with racism, but that's done, and it's your fault for bringing it back up. Did I say, what was that thing I said earlier? Fuck you, Tucker. Right, that's that thing.
And by the way, since we're asking, if it's now possible to change your sex, is it possible to change your race too? If not, tell us why and be specific. After spending more than $1 trillion...
We both, I think, we're going to jump on this. It's nobody
changes their gender.
Well, wait a minute. Nobody changes their sex, their biologic sex. We have to very carefully parse that, because gender can fall on a scale. Gender is how you associate yourself with your anatomical sex. So you cannot change biology. And that's a given. And that's what all these conservatives will latch onto, is that you're trying to change your sex and you can't do that. It's against nature. I'm like, no, dude, no. Guess what? We are biologically male and female. Like, chromosomes dictate that. There is no way we can affect that. What we can understand about ourselves is that my propensity is to attract guys, or to be attracted to guys, or to women, or to not be comfortable with the fact that I was genetically born a male, but I don't identify that way. It doesn't fit with me. That my gender is female, and I identify more with that, or neither. You know, this whole concept of, well, you can change your sex, so now you can change your ethnicity too. It's like, no, fuck you. That's not the argument. And no, you can't change your ethnicity either.
But that's kind of like the argument. Well, and I just remember it because it was not becoming such a terrible thing to be a gay person when I was in high school. You know, more and more people were starting to come out. And the whole argument of it's not natural, that's against God. This is, Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. And I'm like, you know what? That doesn't make any fucking sense, because if you look at biology, like not just human biology, but biology by and large, we are one of however many species, and we are one of the very few statistically that castigates homosexuality.
Right. It
is perfectly acceptable with dogs and cats and goats and cattle and
apes and monkeys and chimps,
every other animal life. Well, I won't say everyone, but I think we're one of, as you said, there are millions of species, and we're one of 1,500 so far observed that do not accept homosexuality. And I'm like, that's so goddamn dumb.
It is. It's ridiculously dumb. And to claim that what he's doing is straw manning, and it's so super clear and it's so super obvious. But again, he's an amazing.
I wouldn't say propagandist, because maybe he's an amazing propagandist to susceptible people, but
right, but that's the audience. That's the audience you want to go for.
My mom's one of them.
Hey, I've got family and friends. I totally understand.
All right, bring this sucker back.
If it's now possible to change your sex, is it possible to change your race too? If not, tell us why and be specific. After spending more than $1 trillion and thousands of lives attacking Afghanistan, Iraq, and Libya and getting nothing for it, why does it now make sense to start new wars in Syria and Iran?
Okay, stop.
And after 30 years...
Can I just point out that both of those things happened under Republican presidents?
Now he does. I don't know where his point is leading, but I do know that I agree with the point that we have this really bad propensity in this country to do offensive wars in places that we have no fucking business being in.
I actually don't feel like we should ever be in any wars because, and this is a small digression, but I really feel like the people that vote to take us into war, unless they actually have skin in the game, have no right to make that vote.
Huh? That's fair.
So,
After the Berlin Wall fell, why should we still treat Russia as our main enemy while completely ignoring China, which actually is?
Whoa, wait, no. Okay, stop.
We're not ignoring China.
That's Trump's whole thing is China is raking us over the coals.
Xi Jinping's dick or whatever his name is. I probably said that wrong.
but what he just said is, why is Russia still the big boogeyman? Like, okay,
because they're still doing bad things.
Exactly,
they're
and
not
more
trying
so.
to be legit.
They're escalating. That's the problem. Ever since Vladimir Putin, which goes back almost 2 decades, they have been progressively escalating their offensive capabilities, be it cyber, be it just taking shit in Crimea. I mean, they basically just walked into Ukraine and said, "We're taking your shit." And they just took that peninsula. And I mean, Russia is doing bad things, and they're doing bad things to us. This narrative of whitewashing the Russia boogeyman follows, again, propaganda right up to Donald Trump's doorstep. That is what he wants us to think. And that's what all these Republican operatives want us to think, that somehow Russia it's not the boogeyman. We should have a better relationship with them.
I understand. Have you seen the recent studies that have polls or whatever that showed that the approval rating of Russia has actually gone up?
Oh my God.
Like of Putin or whatever, however you
Mr.
say
KGB man.
Right. Yeah. Super spy dude.
Secret agent man.
Spies like us.
Ugh.
There is a classic reference. Anyway, I've seen so many polls and stuff where, I mean, now it's obviously very skewed along because they break it down, but among the political parties, like the support for the approval for Putin and Russia has steadily gone up, while rational people are like, Jesus Christ, we're going to blow up. And, you know,
if it's not North Korea, it's Russia or it's
China.
Fucking China. Yeah, that's the thing. Iran's not really a goddamn deal right now. But yeah, economically, China is our enemy. That's entirely true. In terms of like cyber attacks and actually affecting our democracy, that's Russia.
Mm-hmm.
How is it fair to use public resources to bail out reckless financial institutions that caused the last economic collapse?
Okay, stop.
Which other enterprise?
I will tell you that when that happened, I was the biggest critic of that. There is no way that we should be bailing out freaking car companies. They are privately held. They should privately lose. You know, I mean, they gain together, they lose together. And if you failed, there's nothing that should be too big to fail.
Right. Bear Stearns, Goldman Sachs, all those groups.
Period. I'm sorry. If you have to be held up and propped up by the government so that our economy does not crash, you need to be broken up into several different entities.
Agreed. 100%. Now, the one thing I will say about the car company deal was that I was surprised to find out that the vast majority of the money that we gave to the car companies,
it was all paid back.
It got paid back.
It was paid back with interest. So I don't actually have a problem with that part. If there's an agreement, if it's like a loan, that's one thing. But if you are pumping money into an industry so that our economy does not fail, no, you are complicit, sir.
And that is all of the Wall Street firms who are complicit in buying these junk mortgages and all these toxic assets. They are the ones. Yeah. And yes, he's right. That was our public money. That was my and your money that got pumped into them so they wouldn't collapse the economy because they were, quote, too big to fail.
But again, when did that happen?
Clearly, it's Obama's fault because it happened when he was president. Or did it? Or did it happen under George W. Bush?
Right, because I clearly remember that, that real estate bubble bursting.
Oh, yeah.
Which seemed to be the biggest catalyst of the Great Recession.
Interesting how that worked. And it was not. And, when you really want to look at it, no, it wasn't Obama's fault. You could argue that maybe we could have done better, different things to stimulate the economy along the way. But what you don't want to do is hit the economy so hard with a growth spurt that it becomes another bubble. So having this 2, 3, and sometimes 4% growth rate over the course of what was like 94 months or something, it was some insane number of months that the economy improved, majority under President Obama, that was probably the right approach. You could argue that there were certain things you could do differently, but the fact that it grew steady, slow, and consistent was the best way for the economy to recover. How it recovered, you can fiddle with that. But I mean, just this concept that what Trump has done, deregulated, now we're about to have another fucking bubble. That's what scares me most. And Tucker here is not going to report on that.
Oh, no. Why would he?
Enterprises are eligible for tax dollars once they go bankrupt because of stupid decisions. Since we're living by this principle, does it apply to my household budget, for example? And this, is San Francisco better off covered in hypodermic needles and human waste?
Oh my God. I was just going to say this is not a true okay stop moment just because I loved your eye roll. The eye roll was fantastic and nobody could see it. So I just wanted to point that out.
Here's the thing. Okay. When that whole economic bailout thing happened, I don't know if you remember, but people who, and I don't remember the exact dollars, but I'm pretty sure it was like $600 for married couples. And then you got a certain number per kid. It was a stimulus check. And if they paid it to you, however you'd filed your taxes earlier that year. And so if it was direct deposit, it just magically showed up into your checking account. So that affected your personal budget.
Yeah, it did.
There you go, Tucker. It helped you. Okay.
Decisions. Since we're living by this principle, does it apply to my household budget, for example?
It did.
And this, is San Francisco better off covered in hypodermic needles and human waste? Is Baltimore better off since the police there decided to stop enforcing the law?
Okay, stop. So San Francisco is a hellscape, and I didn't realize this, but apparently San Francisco is now just covered in human feces and needles. Right. And Baltimore just doesn't enforce laws anymore.
Right. I've never been to either Maryland or California. Those are things that I plan to remedy in my lifetime, but
I wouldn't now.
No, obviously not, because it's obviously everywhere I go, whether I'm walking or just brushing against buildings, I'm gonna get HIV.
Well, you are, and in fact, you will also become just covered in shit and needles.
Well, right, because
nobody's there to protect you.
It's the smog. That's what the smog is.
Oh, it's just aerosolized human feces from San Francisco.
Detroit and Gary, Indiana doing? Weren't you in charge of those cities? We've got a lot more questions. We could go on, but we're going to start with those. Before canceling democracy, Washington should answer those questions first. And we're going to start by asking them.
And that's not me stopping. That was just the end of the video because at that point he segued into something else. But the fact that apparently Democrats, liberals are canceling democracy.
Well, right. And I'm kind of trying to figure out what the heck we did to Detroit. I mean, but that's not Detroit. That's Flint.
Yeah.
I mean,
no.
What did we do to Detroit? Oh, wait, we bailed out the car companies.
That's true. And we know what happened with most of the economy in Detroit was they outsourced because we allowed those companies to go overseas and make their production in other countries because it's cheaper. Because we can't seem to deal with the fact that we should pay for, U.S. made stuff that's made by union members so that they can support their households and stimulate the economy. And if we do buy some stuff overseas, that's fine. But those companies shouldn't be domestic companies that are run from overseas so they don't have to pay taxes.
Well, and that's what's so bizarre to me about the whole concept of China being our economic enemy. I mean, yes, I get it in like the overarching grand scheme of things, but 70% of our products are imported from China.
Yeah.
So how are they possibly our enemy?
This whole trade deficit thing is ridiculous.
I mean, it's really goddamn dumb. I mean, okay, you're our biggest enemy, but please, where is our next shipment?
I know. It's utterly ridiculous. Final word, tuck you fucker.
Tuck you fucker.
And that's okay, stop.
Okay, stop. Yay, I liked that game.
That was fun. So we have gone through priest abuse follow-up. We've talked about Brett Kavanaugh and his rape allegations and him needing to step aside from his nomination to the Supreme Court. We've played OK Stop, reminding you that Tucker Carlson is a shill and an utter waste of space.
Yes.
Yes.
I was just going to say, it makes me wonder if his tone changes with whomever. I mean, before there was the black guy in power, so we had to hate him, and that's just obviously. But it makes me wonder, like, if there's somebody reasonable in power, is he still crazy?
You know, I just happened to run across a video of, I cannot remember the other guy's name because this goes back about 7, 8, maybe even 10 years, where Tucker was still on CNN doing Crossfire. And he and the other guy, you know, him being the conservative and the other guy being the liberal, you know, and they have to crossfire at each other. When they had Jon Stewart on. And I thought that was it was an interesting conversation, but you could see the like the gel that would become the thing that is Tucker now starting to gel. It was starting to form up, you know, his blobbiness starting to cohese to amalgam into this thing that will become the current Tucker. So I think the seedlings have always been there, but now he has a platform to be a super hyper ethno-nationalist.
Well, Bill O'Reilly's gone.
Well, somebody's got to step up.
Right.
That's exactly
right.
right.
I mean, honestly, if with Bill O'Reilly gone, yeah, somebody's got to take the mantle, and nobody else is really up to who's the other dude? The other Irish guy.
I mean, you got Hannity.
Yes, Sean Hannity. Oh, my God.
But he is so bad that it's almost like Tucker. I can kind of watch Tucker because, one, he is so super disingenuous, but he does it so well. He's so smooth, and he knows how to play the issues in such a way that it almost glazes over as you listen to him, and you have to go back and think, wait a minute, did he just fucking say that? Did he just say that San Francisco's covered in shit and needles?
Well, yeah, because it's sanctuary city.
Yeah, exactly. But he didn't
all
have
those
to say,
migrant pickers that,
exactly.
you know, defecate in the corners of the street.
But he didn't say anything
or the
about
sidewalk. Fuck the corners.
Yeah, but he didn't say anything about immigrants. He didn't say anything about sanctuary cities, but he implies it. He implies that, you know, all of this diversity that is not acceptable because, you know, you're less cohesive because you're not all the same. Ethno-nationalism. That he's an amazing propagandist for white nationalism. And I think it's gross and despicable, but it's interesting to watch somebody who's skilled at doing it so that you can listen to other people who are less skilled and go, fuck you, I know that game, and I'm going to tear you down for it. So he's like sort of the A game of that, and it's funner to watch that so you can understand where they're coming from, because it's scary, but it's real.
Right.
We need to know where they're coming from. I'd rather know where they're coming from. I'd rather not get sideswiped from the right by some slick charlatan, Donnie John, who swoops in and takes the mantle of, you know, the populist, you know, the working man's hero, when he's very obviously not. You know, and I don't want some shilly news guy who's not a news, he's a talk show host, swoop in and somehow help people into this ethno-nationalist lifestyle because it just makes sense and makes you feel comfortable. And he says it really well. I'd rather hear him say it and pick it apart, so the next time somebody who I work with or who I see on the street or in the line at Walmart or, you know, wherever with,
however it works out,
and say, hey, guess what? That shit ain't real, pal. You know? So anyway, we will be dissecting, I think, more of these in the future.
Yes. Yeah.
So with that, Kate, do you have any final thoughts?
You know, I don't, except that, you know, having a map to stay on track has seemed to help us a lot.
We should just qualify this by saying that, yes, I have put a whiteboard up in the studio because my goal is to, I think we had a lot of fun at the last couple of episodes just having these conversations and letting them drift and getting used to the beat and used to how each other sounds and all that. And hopefully you all are enjoying listening to that as well. But for our sake, it seemed like a good idea to keep us on track and help us remind us where the pinpoints are supposed to be during the show.
We have so many brilliant things to say.
That's right.
This is the problem.
We have an embarrassment of riches, indeed.
We do.
So with that then, thank you all for listening to the James Chambers Show with our co-host Kate. We had a fantastic time doing it once again. Follow the show on, of course, YouTube. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. We absolutely would love to hear your comments and your questions and your concerns. Always come challenge us if we have something that you want to challenge us on. We're happy.
Please do. We love a healthy debate.
We do love a healthy debate, and we would love to prove our case if we need to, because we will do that as well. Follow the show on Twitter at RealJCShow, or email the show at RealJCShow2017. That's RealJCShow2017 and I will be grateful for hearing from you. Other than that, I think that's it.
Thank you, guys.
Have a wonderful evening. Love you guys. Talk to you next time.